I'm going to be using a wheel to pick what I'm reading. Let's go. So I do feel like this book has disappointed me a little bit so far. I'm done with reading. I don't want to read. The sexual tension? Incredible. I have been working on a lot of curated themed vlogs recently, and I'm really happy with how they've all been turning out. But as a consequence of that, some things have been neglected. And those things are all of the books that were actually on my TBR. So I have quite a significant backlist of books that I need to get through at this point. And I still have plans for more theme vlogs coming soon. So I thought it would be fun if I did a 24-hour reading vlog, just focusing on the books in this cart, which I did do a couple of months ago, but I used my own free will to choose the books in that video. This time I'm doing something potentially unhinged, depending on how it turns out, because I'm going to be using a wheel to pick what I'm reading off this cart. So there are 26 books on this wheel. It's pretty much everything that has been added to a TBR in 2026 that I have not read. There are a couple of things that I'm eliminating from this. Two of those are from my August TBR, which are the books that I put on my TBR for the Broken Binding project that I'm going to be doing, where I review the first year of the Broken Binding sci-fi and fantasy sub. This vlog is obviously not that project, so I'm just not going to be putting these on the wheel. And then the other book that's eliminated is my current Patreon book club book, which is The Glow of the Everflame by Pen Cole, because I need to make a spoiler vlog for Patreon for that. And I think juggling that vlog and this vlog at the same time will just be a little bit too much when I'm also trying to read as much as possible. So we're going to use the wheel to pick a book, and I'm just going to try and get through as many books as I possibly can in 24 hours. Now, the style of 24-hour readathon I'm going to be doing is going to be the same as last time, because I cannot do 24 hours like from start to finish in one go. I value my sleep. My mental health collapses without it. The more uncomfortable I get, the more stroppy I get, and not in an entertaining way. So instead, I'm going to be doing 2 non-consecutive days of 12 hours of reading in each. That means that I'm essentially dedicating 90% of my weekend hours to reading, but I still get a little time to decompress and sleep, and also like a day or two in between to do other things. Because if I'm forced into doing the same thing for an extended period of time, I start to just not do it. And what we actually want here is for me to read as many of these books as possible. Now, the reason why I'm worried about this spinner wheel is because we have a lot of books that I would be really happy to pick up in a 24-hour readathon on this cart. We have some contemporary romance books on here, which would be perfect for this challenge. I have a 150-page novella up here, which I would love to come up. I also have some fantasy that I think would be a little bit faster paced. But then I also have epic fantasy. You can't see, but behind here we have Ashes of the Sun by Django Wexler. I also have some atmospheric fantasy that's a little slower paced. Historical fantasy, once again, assuming very slow paced. So some of the books that are eligible to be chosen are not necessarily well suited to this kind of challenge. But I'm struggling to prioritize these books literally any other way. So whatever comes up, I'm just gonna have to go with. Now, I'm actually not going to be starting the readathon right now, but I want to get a really early start tomorrow. So I'm gonna pick my first book with you guys. And then as soon as I get up tomorrow, I can make my coffee and I can get stuck into it without having to worry about being like coherent before caffeine. So I'm gonna be showing you guys as I spin this wheel, and let's see what our first book is gonna be. A Dance with Lies by Brittany Arena. It's actually called A Dance of Lies, but this is a really great pick actually. It's a bit thick and it's political fantasy, but essentially the reason why I have this on my TBR right now is because I do have an arc of the sequel, which was released I think just a few days ago. And obviously to read book 2 in the duology, I have to read book 1. I have as well put sequels on here where I have more than one book in the same series on my TBR. And if any of the sequels come up, like for the Pomegranate Gate series, I'll just read whichever book in the series I need to that is also on my TBR. So we'll be starting with a pretty thick, I think this is an adult fantasy. It was in the Fairy Loot adult box. It is political fantasy. I think it has a romance in because somebody told me that this has like a slow burn with a lot of yearning, which is one of my favorite things when it comes to romance. And I also saw a negative review of this on TikTok saying that it has very little fantasy in it. It's a lot of political intrigue, which in the perspective of the person who made that video was a negative and they DNF'd because of it. But it actually sounds like something that I would really enjoy. What I know about this is that it is following a dancer who has been imprisoned, but the king offers her an opportunity to free herself if she spies for him at some sort of upcoming political royal gathering. I think the Fairy Loot sale for the sequel is coming up soon as well. The early access sale for this is coming at the end of September, so this is a great time for me to read this because then I'll know if I'm actually invested enough in this one to pick up the special edition of book 2. So great pick to start off with. So it is 7:47 a.m. I have my coffee, a vanilla oat milk iced latte. I have my book. I've taken the original cover off and put on this Illumicrate dust jacket to protect it from my grubby mitts while I'm reading. I also have my blanket. I have my dog. And the only thing I have left to do now is start the timer. Unlike last time, when I start this, I'm not stopping it. I don't have to work out today. I'm doing a 10K program that I've just started and today is a rest day. I do plan on going for a little walk with Kami in a couple of hours. And aside from that, I have lunch and dinner to make and those are my only scheduled breaks for the next 12 hours. Let's do this. Amongst the trees, making potions out of leaves. Girl, this ain't going well. Thanks. Let me read. Don't tell them what you've seen. So I think that I might make up for lost time that we wasted. So next time our paths realign, we'll catch up on past lives and laugh about these childlike things, like fights and bickering, first dates and paper rings, and all these childlike things. It is 9:13 and I've been reading for just under 90 minutes. I've made it 70 pages into my book. It's not too slow so far, which is great because I was a little bit worried about that, but I'm going to take a little break, maybe about 30 minutes to go for a walk. And when I come back, it took me ages to fall asleep last night. I haven't been sleeping very well, which is quite unusual for me actually. But over the last month or so, I feel like I've been awake for a long time before I fall asleep. So I'm going to get myself some more caffeine, but I think I'm going to make a cup of tea and then settle in and read another chunk. What if we were meant to be this whole time? Just miss the signs. Imagining a world where we made it out alive. Didn't waste no time. I kinda wanna do this, but I don't know if you feel the same way. Should I tell you how I feel or just dance around it? I kinda wanna take us down that road, but I don't know where it goes. Should we dance around? I have just hit part 2 in A Dance of Lies, and up until this point I felt kind of lukewarm about this book, which is unfortunate. I think that the writing is a tad dramatic in the description, and I feel like we're a little too locked into the mind of our main character, who is a little bit repetitive in her monologue. She keeps repeating like motifs over and over again for dramatic effect, and it's feeling a little too contrived for me. But the last 50 pages or so, I've definitely got more invested, because I'm not disliking the book, I'm just not overly invested at this point. So I feel like right now it could go either way. But the synopsis of this one is pretty simple. We are following a young woman who is a dancer, and she was a dancer in the king's court. She was known as the king's jewel. He used to bestow her with all of these gifts and all of this attention. She used to do private dances for him. She had her own rooms within the palace. They never had a physical romantic relationship, but she was very much in love with him or infatuated with him. And it's clear from her perspective that she wanted that relationship to cross that boundary. However, one day the king framed her for the murder of one of his advisors, and she knows that he knows that she didn't kill this guy, because they were together at the time that this man was supposedly murdered, but she was performing a private dance for him, so there were no other witnesses and she doesn't have an alibi. So for the last 2 years she has been imprisoned, and the king offers her release if she goes to this like royal political gathering and spies for him. There are 6, I think, royals in this world, but the country that our main character is currently living in should be one united country. But when that king's father died, he split the territory into 3 and bestowed an area upon each of his sons. And as the main character arrives at this event, which is called the Gathering, it lasts for 6 weeks, the first instructions that she gets from the king, even before he arrives, is to gain his youngest brother's attention and start to ingratiate herself in his court. Something that is interesting about this is that it is very much focused on the political fantasy and the intrigue elements of the book. And I've seen this referred to as a romantasy sometimes, not always, but like the Amazon description, I'm pretty sure, says that this is a romantasy. And I would disagree, because at this point we are very much focused on this fantastical plotline. There are definitely inklings that there is going to be some sort of romantic plot throughout this, but one thing that really interests me, and the thing that is keeping me hooked at this point, is that I don't know who the love interest is, because we have 3 people set up here. Now, one of them I'm pretty sure is not actually going to be the love interest, because that is the original king that she was allied to, the one that has sent her to spy for him. Our main character very clearly comes from a household of abuse. She ran away from home when she was 13 years old, and we get glimpses of her home life in here. She was very close to her stepmother, but her father was quite obviously abusive, and the relationship that she has with the king that has sent her to spy, he's called Elian, is very clearly an abusive relationship in a different way than the one that she had experienced before. It reminds me a lot actually of elements of the Plated Prisoner series by Raven Kennedy. If you've read that series, you'll probably like get the same vibes from this. But obviously there was an intense emotional relationship between them at some point, and there are still residual feelings there. So there's like an element of, it's not romance obviously, but there have been romantic feelings present there that is still creating tension in the present timeline. We also have the master of ceremonies for the Gathering, who is the first person that our main character encounters when she arrives at this place, because she has to audition to become one of the dancers for this event, because it's obviously quite prestigious and exclusive. And then we have Prince Elian's younger brother, Anton. And right now I can't tell whether the actual love interest is the prince or the master of ceremonies. And I love a love triangle, especially one where I can't tell which way the main character is going to go, because I feel like it would be in her best interest to stay away from people in positions of power like princes. But Prince Anton is giving very different vibes to his older brother. And then we of course have the master of ceremonies, who is a little bit more on an even playing field with our main character, character. He's a little bit harsh with her in terms of the fact that she is like kind of dancing on his behalf during the ceremony, but generally he has her best interest at heart, and we find out why he has a little bit of an edge to that kindness throughout the beginning of this book as well. So the possibility of these different romantic relationships is what has kept me interested when I wasn't quite gelling with the writing, but in those last 50 pages I feel like the plot has picked up a little bit. We have got a little bit more knowledge of some of the other parties outside of King Alien, and I'm interested to see where the story goes. Something that is frustrating me a little bit though is that the main character is not fooling anyone with her behavior. Literally everybody is suspicious of her, but nobody's actually doing anything about it, and her excuses and her reasonings are very, very weak. So I guess I just have to suspend my disbelief and kind of roll with it, even though like I feel like a lot of the things in this shouldn't actually even be happening because the main character is kind of so obvious. In terms of our timer, I think I have just over 20 hours to go, which is just over 8 hours for today. I am going to switch activities just briefly though, because I am still reading, or rereading should I say, A Court of Mist and Fury by Sarah J. Maas. If you have missed it, I am rereading this series, annotating them for the first time during my reread, and also recapping them. I'm posting recap videos up until the release of ACOTAR 6, which we have finally got a title and a cover for, which is nice. Given the synopsis of that and that it focuses on Koshai the Deathless, I'm actually more interested in it than I was just knowing that it was coming out. I have been dragging my feet a little bit on this because I really struggle when I'm reading more than one book at once to decide what to prioritize and when, unless I have a clear distinction between them. Because obviously, like if I'm going for a walk or I'm doing housework, then I listen to an audiobook. And then if I'm reading physically, I normally have a physical book. But if I have more than one physical book, then I really struggle to switch between them or prioritize which one I should be making progress on. And this is now long overdue. I should be reading A Court of Wings and Ruin right now. So now that I've read like a section of my book, I'm just going to read 3 chapters of this. It does take me a lot longer to read it because I'm annotating and also summarizing it for a recap. So hopefully during this 24 hours, I'll be able to just lock in and get through a little chunk of this. And I have recently over the last couple of days been breaking this down into 3 chapter chunks, which has really helped a lot because the chunks are a lot less intimidating if I break them down into such small sections. So this one is about 37 pages, and then it will probably be about lunchtime and I'll return to A Dance of Lies. It has been a very slow and a very sleepy afternoon, but I now have 14 and a half hours-ish left on the clock. So we are about 9.5 hours into today's session, and I have just made it to the end of part 2 of A Dance of Lies. So I have about 135 pages left of this one. My main goal for today would be to finish this, but given that I'm about to go and make dinner and I'm also going to take a bit of a break and watch an episode of The Valley, I don't know whether I'm going to make it or whether I'm going to run over the 12 hours to finish it or what my plan is, but that is my goal. In terms of my feelings on this book at this point, I like a lot about this. I like that, as I heard from that negative review, at the point that I'm at in this book, there is still no magic. It is pure political intrigue, and I am really enjoying that. I also really liked that we had a love triangle in here. I feel like the dominant love interest is becoming a lot more clear where I'm currently up to, but I do like a book that keeps me guessing when we have 2 good choices. And I also actually like the dance element of this, which when I got this in a fairy leo, I wasn't sure if it was going to be for me because it centers around dance, but it actually only really focuses on it from a performance sense, like when the character is actually performing. Outside of that, she is more focused on the intrigue and the plotting and the schemes that she's ended up wrapped up in. I do think though that a lot about this book is a little bit obvious and a little surface level. And I feel like our main character is incredibly unperceptive. One of the male leads in this book is extremely resand coded, which I feel like at this point is a little bit overdone as well, because back in the day, you know, resand was a surprise to us all. When we found out Risand's true nature, I was shocked. Now in 2026, it's been what, 11 years? Having a character that seems like a bad guy that actually isn't all that bad is not a novelty. And as a reader, I can kind of see it a mile off. Now, obviously, I'm not in the perspective of our main character, who has a history of abuse and also a lot of trust issues, which is definitely clouding her judgment. But I do find her lack of awareness extremely frustrating. I feel like there is a lot in here that we are accepting as truth for the sake of the plot, even though it's quite obviously not actually what's going on regarding that character, but also some other things going on in here as well. Something I do like actually is that it deals with some darker topics, strong themes of abuse in here. Also, in the content warnings page, the letter from the author actually that's bound into the Fairy Loot edition talks about how the author was sick and she either discovered reading for the first time or came back to reading during this period. And she found that to be very freeing and a distraction from the situation that she was currently in. And then later on, she decided to write her own book and had a similar experience with that process. And then in the content warnings of this, it does say that it contains like themes of abuse. It also say that it contains chronic illness and disability. Honestly, I can't really speak on that topic and how good the representation is in this book with any credibility. But I do think that if I had not read that content warning at the beginning that says that this contains chronic illness and disability, I wouldn't have noticed. And I think that is because our main character, obviously, she's been imprisoned for 2 years. And in the first chapter of this book, she's seen by a physician who says, like, I don't know if your nerves are ever going to recover or your body's ever going to recover fully from what you've suffered. So it's like laid out right there at the beginning. But then throughout the actual course of the process of this book, she is training extremely aggressively. She has 2 months to prepare for this gathering. And then when she arrives, she's like choreographing new routines and she's training and like rehearsing really hard for that. She's also in the background of this. She has all of the spy stuff going on. She is attending parties to network. She's sneaking around on like the king's missions. She's eavesdropping. She's doing all of this stuff. And occasionally throughout this, it will say that she's tired or that like she hurts. And it's very brief, but that to me is not outside the ordinary in a book where a character is training so aggressively, especially given the fact that she's had a long period of inactivity before this. She's in like a brand new training regime. She's trying to rebuild strength regardless of anything else that's going on. And this schedule that she's on now would be incredibly demanding anyway. I also definitely think that I've read better representation of chronic pain in the past. But given that the themes of trauma and abuse and the main character having such a visceral reaction to that is so consistent throughout here, I feel like the chronic illness and disability element is feeling to me a little bit unrepresented in this one, which was something that after I'd read the bits at the beginning of this book, I was really interested to see how it's portrayed. I mean, Fourth Wing has a similar portrayal, which I actually think is executed better than it is in this book, more consistently. So I do feel like this book has disappointed me a little bit so far on that front, because I feel like that is something that's very underrepresented, especially in the fantasy genre, and I wanted to see how it was executed in this story. But I'm gonna go and make myself some dinner. We're having enchiladas, so it shouldn't take too long for me to make. There's a fly in here. It's been bothering me all day, a singular fly. And then I'm gonna watch some TV and then see when I'm refreshed how long we have left and whether I can make it through the end of this book. So I have less than an hour left of our first 12 hours, and I read a chapter while I was cooking. So I have 123 pages left, I think. So I'm going to go out on a limb and say I'm not going to finish this in the next hour. Whether I'm going to continue on and finish it and just run over the 12 hours and do a shorter session when I pick this back up, we're gonna have to wait and see, because honestly I started playing Paleo recently, or Paleo, I think. Yeah, Paleo sounds better. And that's my plan for when I'm done here today. So am I going to commit to the end of this book, or am I going to commit to like 2 hours of Paleo before bed? Sadly, I think I might know the answer to that. Just here to tell you that I'm done, and by done I don't mean I finished the book. I absolutely have not, but I have hit 12 hours. So I've paused it where I got to the end of my chapter with 11 hours, 58 minutes and 33 seconds left on the clock. And I got to page 354. So I have 73 pages left, I think. And that is just far too many for me to concern myself with tonight. So we're just going to leave that for another day. This is why I don't do 24 hours straight through, because after 12, I'm done with reading. I don't want to read until at least tomorrow, at a minimum tomorrow. So even though I relatively have a very small amount of this book left, I'm literally just going to put it down and walk away from it. If it was a 5-star, I probably would stick it out, but it's not. So I'm fine to set it down, and I'm going to go and investigate a dragon shrine and water my crops. I've got tomatoes to harvest in Paleo. What the fuck? I could not have planned that if I tried. So it's 8:30. And I'm getting a little bit of a later start today than I did for the first half of this readathon, because I did snooze my first alarm. But as you can see, I did manage to wake up before the last one. So as with the other day, I have got all my ducks in a row, so I shouldn't have too much to take me away from reading today. I have lunch and dinner, of course, as always, but I did get pizza in, Morrison's Pizza, for dinner, which I did the last time we did a 24-hour readathon, to make dinner as easy as possible. All of my workouts for the week are done. Today is a rest day, so I will just be going out for a walk with Kami at some point this morning. But my first port of call, my first task for the day is of course going to be to finish A Dance of Lies. I have not picked this up at all since the first 12 hours of this readathon, so I still have around 70 pages left. I will say though, the couple of days away from this has made me a little bit more eager to get back into it now that I've taken a bit of a break, and I'm actually quite excited to finish a book because I feel like I've been slowly plodding along with a few recently, but I don't think I've finished anything in like almost a week. So let's get this show on the road. We have 11 hours, 58 minutes and 33 seconds left on the clock. Let's see how much reading we can get done. All in my head, like pictures of you, visions of what was said. And I know your storm will settle down, but I know I'm right now. So I'll take you back to all the wasted nights, even when you threw the glass. So I finished A Dance of Lies, and I have incredibly mixed feelings about this one. The last 80 pages were a little bit of a struggle for me, especially when I first picked it up. I was like so over this book at that point, but the closer we got to the end of this, the more I became interested again. So there are a lot of things that I really like about this book. I really like the setting. I like that it is mainly political intrigue with very little historical fantasy. I will reinforce the content warning at the beginning of this for themes of abuse, because I think it is something that is incredibly prevalent throughout this entire book. It really forms a big part of the history of our main character and different types of abuse as well in different environments, but also continues throughout the course of this book. And I think that those elements of the book were quite difficult to read in parts. The author does definitely go into it, and also the lasting effects that this abuse has had on our main character. I also really liked the antagonist. Not that I liked him as a person, but I thought that he did a really good job filling the role of antagonist. And I think that Brittany Arena made him this really like sinister, foreboding presence. And I also really liked the love interest. I liked the banter between the main character and the love interest. And I also do kind of like the type of character that the love interest is. It's very like Nikolai meets Rhysand, I would say, are the vibes that you're getting from this guy. I also really like the plot of this and the structure, but I really do not like the main character. She infuriated me throughout this entire book, which I've already touched upon slightly, but one of the final nails in her coffin, there is a point where she kind of changes tactics throughout this, and she kind of finally gets to a point where she's doing something a little bit different. But towards the end of this book, in the last 80 pages that I've just read, she has the audacity to call somebody else a fool because they believe that if they do what somebody else has told them to do, then that person will be loyal to them, which is exactly what she is doing. She is constantly following the orders and the whims of somebody that she knows is a bad guy, just in case they do something. Like, she is constantly believing that they are going to do the thing that they say that they will do if she does what they want her to. And we've already established that they're a bad guy. We've already established that she will never be free of this chain if she keeps doing what this person wants. They're going to keep manipulating her into doing what they want, and she keeps going along with it, and that frustrated me to no end, honestly. I also don't really like the writing style in here. I do find it to be a little bit too overdramatic. And you know, earlier on in this book, I did recognize that one of the love interests was very reminiscent of Rhysand, and if I was not already sure that this author had read Sarah J. Maas, the writing style was definitely a dead giveaway. But there was one point in this book where a piece of description uses the phrase "the darkness between stars," and I was like, there's just so many signs in here that you're an SJM fan, and that is fine. Obviously, I am an SJM fan, so I'm not necessarily against it, but I just felt like that was really obvious, and the kind of trying to not mimic the same writing style, but obviously having been clearly influenced by that writing style, I did find to be especially obvious. The over dramatic repetition and description really stood out to me. I also didn't really love the fantastical element in this one, which does progress and become actually apparent towards the end of this. But I thought that the way that it was introduced earlier into the story was a little bit obvious, but also very confusing. Like, the weaving of the political element of this plotline and also the fantastical element did feel a little bit clumsy. It didn't feel natural. And I also feel that way about the way that it manifested and came to the forefront at the end of this book. So I have gone through many stages in the course of reading this one. My original plan when I picked this up, even when I knew that this wasn't going to be a book that I love, and I did like this book, I gave it, it's like a solid 3-star rating, but I do have the sequel on my TBR, which is the whole reason why this is on my TBR. So I was like, when do I ever get the opportunity to just read an entire series at once? Like, I should read this for the rest of the 24 hours. And then when I picked this up today, I was like, I think I need a break if I'm going to continue. At one point, I just considered removing it from my TBR, which, to be fair, at this point, I still cannot promise you that I'm going to continue on with this series. But based on the very end of this book, I am now more inclined to do so than I was originally. The main character was just continuing to frustrate me, but we did have a little bit of a turning point, which is going to take the next book in a completely different direction, which is good, because if it was going the way that I thought it was going to go, I did not think that I could cope being in her perspective for like any amount of time in this second book. But now that we're working with something a little bit different, I am open to it. But instead of just going ahead and reading this one, it is shorter as well, which is why I'm a little bit tempted. It's only 380 pages. So I could do it. See, and now I'm thinking about it again. I was gonna say, what do you guys think? But by the time you see this, like it's already going to have happened. Ooh, something that I do really like about this actually is that it does have a recap of book one in the front, which is nice for people who aren't reading them back to back. I think what I'm gonna do is leave it on my TBR. I'm not writing it off, but I am going to return to the wheel. Now I've removed A Dance of Lies from the wheel because we've read it. The chances of this coming up now are of course very slim because it's like a 1 in 25 chance that the sequel is going to come up, but I have left it open to possibility. So we're just going to return to the wheel. We're going to see what comes up, and if it is A Dance with Death, so be it. Great. But I'm actually hoping for some contemporary romance here, or that novella would be amazing. Contemporary romance. I actually think this is more like contemporary with romance, but I'm still down. I feel like this is one I can get locked into. It is a little bit of a longer one in terms of the romance that I currently have on my TBR, but it's one that I'm very, very excited about. I've heard really good things about Callie Fortune, and because I like my contemporary romance to have something extra in it, I do feel like I'm really going to enjoy this one. So I actually wanted to read, is it One Perfect Summer? Every Summer After? One Golden Summer? I think Every Summer After is the one that I wanted to read because I think that's the one that the show was based on. I've actually heard really bad things about the show though, so I'm not in any rush to watch it right now anymore. But I do also own One Golden Summer, which I believe is like a companion novel to Every Summer After, which is kind of why I wanted that to be my starting point. But this one was an arc sent to me by Penguin Michael Joseph, who always spoil me. So thank you as always to Penguin for sending this one my way. This one, I love the font on the back. This one, if I remember correctly, is following a woman. It's the same synopsis as Happy Ending by Chloe Lisa, and also, can't remember the name of it, I'll put it here, the Christina Lauren book that's about a honeymoon. But the main character breaks up with her partner and ends up going on holiday with her best friend. So this is about two characters called Frankie and George who are best friends. They've been best friends forever, but they've had this really tumultuous fight, and I'm assuming that they haven't spoken since. It doesn't say how long it's been since that either. But George walks in on the eve of Frankie's wedding, which kind of throws them together again, and at this point she has everything that she's ever wanted in life until the next morning when her fiance dumps her on the morning of her wedding. So she obviously wants to wallow, but George suggests that she goes on her honeymoon, and they end up doing that together. So as I have so many books with this plot, but I haven't read any yet, I'm really excited about that because I like Friends to Lovers when it's done well. Like I used to love it back in the day in like young adult contemporary. Childhood best friends to like coming of age lovers. Oh, that was my jam. I don't think I've enjoyed it as much in an adult setting from what I've read, but I haven't read that much. So I'm hoping that I'm gonna love this one, and I'm also hoping that it has some like real emotional moments in it as well, which is kind of what I'm expecting from Callie Fortune. Just open this up to start it, and this may be one of the only contemporary, especially like romance leaning books I've ever seen that has a map at the beginning. I'm guessing this is the place that they go on their honeymoon. Also, can we talk about killer opening lines? I feel like I'm already hooked.
No doubt that I gotta leave me no other route. Well, I don't wanna be your hero anymore. I guess it's time to hang up my cape, 'cause I don't wanna fight your demons anymore. I guess it's time to pack up, walk away.
We are approaching the halfway point for today. I've got 6 hours and 19 minutes left, and I'm 150 pages into Our Perfect Storm, and it is so hard to focus on this book because every 20 pages or so I'm putting my book down and I'm looking up places to stay on Airbnb. I have been craving a remote nature getaway for months. But obviously, like, autumn is the perfect time. I do like a little autumn staycation, but I have a big trip already coming up in autumn, and then that goes straight into Curtis's busy period of work, so we can't really go away in like November and December. But this book is making it so difficult because I'm not super familiar with Canada. Like, I know the bare basics, if that. But I didn't realize going into this, it was set in Canada in general, but that the vacation that they go on is also in Canada. They've gone to Vancouver Island, I think, which, yeah, Tofino is the place. And it's essentially just this gorgeous landscape full of water and enormous trees. And it's just really making me want to abandon my house and disappear into nature, which I live in a really small town anyway, and I'm very countryside adjacent. But I don't know, the older I get, the more I just want to move into a cabin in the middle of the Lake District. Shame that's really expensive though, so who knows if that will ever be in my future. But I am really enjoying the book. With 6 hours left, I'm hoping that I can finish this one up. It is of course a much quicker read than A Dance of Lies was, because it's contemporary, and it's also very absorbing. It's reminded me a little bit of the only Christina Lauren book that I've read so far. Once again, what is it with me and Christina Lauren titles? Apparently I just can't retain them. Is it Love and Other Words? Yes, that one is a childhood best friends to lovers romance, which I did really enjoy. There were a couple of things I didn't love about it though, but I think because I've read so few adult friends to lovers books, this one is feeling very reminiscent of that one to me, and I am eating it up, especially because it is so obvious that this guy is down bad and has been his entire life. The breakup of the marriage, or the upcoming nuptials, happens at around the page 30 mark, so right at the beginning. But in the first 30 pages of this book, I was like, these two are so obviously in love with each other that I do not know how we ended up here. Like, she's had a fallout with her best friend. They haven't spoken properly in about 5 months, and it's like the eve of her wedding, and she's sat nervous at the table because he hasn't showed up yet, and she's on edge. She can't enjoy her own like wedding party situations because she's waiting for this man. And then we find out in like chapter 1 or 2 that they have each other's names tattooed on their ribs, and I was like, how are you ever going to be with anyone else? Like, that is just like a dead giveaway. You two are obsessed with each other. Obviously anyway, because this just makes sense to me because they've been friends. I mean, saying that, my best friend is a guy, and believe me when I say we're just friends, we've been friends for like half of our lives now. More than that, we've been best friends for 17 years. So maybe it's not so obvious because that is a purely platonic relationship, but to me it is obvious that because they've been friends their entire lives and they've passed through all of these different life stages together, that some romantic feelings, like there has been an attempt made throughout the how many years, like 22 years I think, that they've been friends, and it was kind of like rebutted and was considered like a lapse in judgment kind of situation. But aside from that, these two have been purely platonic, but their dependency on each other and the way that they orbit each other, the way that their lives are intertwined, and even when our main character was going to get married, like this guy, her best friend, still the most important person in her life, not her soon-to-be husband, still this man that she's known her entire life. So they were a done deal. They were a done deal from the day that they met. So I can't believe that we have to go through this whole honeymoon process for them to realize or for her to realize maybe that they need to be together. But you know, I love me a man that pines, a man that yearns, a man that has sat in silence for years and years and years, loving a woman. Sold. So yeah, you could say I'm having a good time. It's passing really quickly when I can get off my phone and stop looking at trips. The thing is about UK staycations, because I want to stay somewhere like really picturesque, it's expensive. Like, I could go to Europe for a week for the same price as I would pay to stay in a fancy cabin in the UK for like 4 nights. So I've also been looking at Germany. I'm not going to book any of these things. Please pray I don't. I'll just stress myself out with the time constraints of having to get organized to go. But yeah, this is really, really making me want to go lock myself somewhere remote and picturesque for at least a week. Canada would be great, but it's also really expensive to fly to Canada. But that's definitely also on my bucket list. Anyway, I'm going to go back to my book and keep daydreaming about sitting in for hours in the forest with not a single other person in miles. Guys, I am almost 250 pages into this and I am not chill. I am not chill. I am so deeply invested in this. I knew I was going to love this. I hate that I haven't read Carly Fortune yet. I was going to say you guys should have told me that I needed to prioritize this. But you know, this one's on me because a lot of you guys were actually really enthusiastic about Carly Fortune when I hauled this one. I'm loving it. I just, the sexual tension. Incredible. I have like 150 pages left and 4.5 hours. I think I am going to make it. I am having dinner pretty soon though, because Curtis is going out tonight. He's off to play Magic the Gathering, so we normally eat early. And I'll probably maybe watch an episode of The Valley, but then I'm going to be locked into this until it's done. I am just, I stopped mid-chapter to update you because the tension was so intense that I needed a break from it. I was like, I need to get out of here. But yeah, very good time so far. Would highly recommend. Okay, I just wanted to bring you a timer update because we have 2 hours and 26 minutes on the clock. Dinner has been had. I've cracked myself a little fizzy V and I have 229 pages left. I've got this. I believe in myself today.
Big escape. Every time.
So the lighting in here is getting questionable, but we are drawing to the end of this readathon and I'm also about to move into the other room, so bear with me. But we just have 28 minutes of the readathon left, and we also have 27 minutes until the announcement for the autumn round of Magical Readathon, which I'm very excited about. However, this video has helped to make a small dent in my TBR, so we're down to 26 books, I think, instead of 28, or is it 24 instead of 26? It's still over 20 anyway, which is not amazing, and I'm about to plan out my September TBR. So RIP me, but we're in a better position than we were 24 hours ago. At least. But I have finished Our Perfect Storm by Carly Fortune and I loved this. I gave it 5 stars. This was a joy and a delight to read in 24 hours. I had a whale of a time, pun intended actually, because a big part of this book is whales. I think Carly Fortune, it says in the back that she used to be a journalist. I'm pretty sure that she had an interest in like environmental journalism. And of our 2 main characters in this book, George is actually also an environmental journalist. And the main character's mother was doing environmental work with whales when she became pregnant. And a big point of this story is that when Frankie was 8 years old, her mother left. And when she asked her father where her mother had gone, he said that she'd gone home and she spent 1.5 years out working with whales before she came back home, and Frankie has resented her for it ever since, and she's now 30 years old throughout the course of this book. So we have like whales playing a significant part in this book like throughout the course of it. I really enjoyed this. Like I said, back in my YA contemporary romance days when I was a wee young lass, oh my god, there is nothing that I wanted more than to have a male best friend and fall madly in love with him. And just to clarify, because like I said, I have a best friend that I've been friends with for 17 years. We became friends years after I'd given up on that. This is like, I'm talking about when I was like 12, 13, 14. That is literally all I wanted from life, was to have this like hot best friend that would end up being the love of my life. So I do have a special place in my heart for friends to lovers. And I think that this was executed really well, because something that annoys me in books a lot, it applies to any relationship, but it is especially relevant to friends to lovers story. If I don't see your relationship develop in a book, I don't care about it. So when we start a fantasy novel and it's like, oh, my sister's been kidnapped on page 10 and I have to like get her back because she's like the most important person in my life. I haven't, obviously, I mean, like a family member going missing is a big deal, but I'm only going to feel it if I've read it. Otherwise, it's just this abstract concept to me, like, oh yeah, your sister's gone missing. That's like a good enough motivation to set us on this plot. The flashbacks that we get in here are pretty sparse. There's a few of them, but it tends to be like 3 pages from 1 year of their friendship, as opposed to big chunks of the book being in the past timeline when they were kids. So I thought that Carly Fortune did a really, really good job of making the reader fall in love with George while Frankie was also falling in love with George. Because when you have the element missing, like if I'm already supposed to care, like in a second chance romance and a friends to lovers, if you're not going to build the relationship before my very eyes, then I'm not going to be invested. And Carly Fortune did an amazing job of that. This story is also incredibly similar to Love and Other Words by Christina Lauren. So if you enjoyed that book, then I think that you would also really love this one. I do think that this one executes it a little bit better though. I think we spent too long in the past timeline in the Christina Lauren book, whereas this one I felt was a much better balance. I will say I called the third act breakup from very close to the beginning, which I'm not going to say any more than that, but I do still think that it was a really good point of tension in this. And I love a third act breakup because to me, tension is more important than anything else. What I don't like is a third act breakup that is stupid or doesn't make any sense or relies on things like miscommunication, which I feel like this one does to a degree. The reason for the miscommunication is, well, it's not the communication isn't happening for what in my opinion is a legitimate reason. So I was kind of fine with that. But yeah, excellent result from my first Carly Fortune book. Now, obviously, I don't have long left. I've got 23 minutes left of this readathon. So I'm going to go set up my TV for the premiere of Magical Readathon. And while I wait, I'm going to read as much as I can of the book that I'm reading not for this video, because there's no point me starting anything now. So I am currently up to part 3 of Silver Cloak by L.K. Stephen. I'm reading this for Shelved or Scrap It. You are supposed to see this episode very soon. Honestly, I don't think you're going to. I haven't made a lot of progress, but this is the book that I'm reading. I'm not going to talk about it too much here because you'll hear all about it in Shelve It or Scrap It, but just know I'm having a very good time. I have already had 3 5-star reads this month. One was a reread, but I've now had 2 new 5-star reads and a 4.5. Can we believe it? Who even am I? And honestly, this is looking real good. I'm not too far into it. I'm only on page 132, but it's looking real good. Honestly, I don't know whether I'm going to check in with you guys tonight with my total and my wrap up and everything, or whether I'm just going to catch up with you in the morning. But the next time you see me, it will be to talk about everything that we've done during this vlog. So I'll be honest, I have not read a thing. I did not read a single page of Silver Cloak. I ate a cake. That is the only thing of interest that I did in that last 22-ish minutes of the readathon. And then at 8:30 as the readathon ended, I did watch the Magical Readathon announcement, and I have my list of prompts that I need to fulfill, and I'm very excited about them. A couple of them are a little bit tricky, but I don't think I've done too bad this round. Sometimes I get one prompt that I can only fill with like one book out of my entire collection, but I think we're doing okay this round. You will see my TBR very soon, actually, so keep your eyes peeled for that. But to wrap up our 24-hour readathon, I did of course finish 2 whole books during this period. The first one was a bit of a disappointing one. We had a 3-star read, which was A Dance of Lies by Brittany Arena, and I feel like I'm quite forgiving of books. When I don't like them, I do generally try to be nice about it, because I'm very aware that every book is probably somebody's favorite book, and just because there were elements that I didn't like about this doesn't mean that you were not gonna like it. And so I try to be articulate about what I don't like, so that if that's something you do like, then you can pick it up. But then when you have a 5-star read after a 3-star, I feel like it really highlights the difference between a book that you love and a book that you don't. So after reading Our Perfect Storm, I'm more inclined to just leave this series here and not continue and read the sequel, but it's only been like less than 12 hours since I finished this one, so I'll take a little bit more time to make my mind up on what I'm actually going to do about this. I didn't hate this one is the thing. There was a lot that I really enjoyed, but also a lot that frustrated me, and those are the worst books for me. I would rather dislike everything about a book than have points that I loved that I felt like weren't executed to the level that they could have been. The next book I read was of course Our 5-star. I flew through this. I loved it, and I'm so glad that this one came up today. My first Carly Fortune, and also a huge success. If I was not working on Shelve It or Scrap It right now, but also if I was not behind on Shelve It or Scrap It, I feel like I would be running upstairs to pick up One Golden Summer, even if I haven't read the book that comes before it. That is how much of a good time that I had with this. I've also been reading a ton of epic fantasy fantasy recently. So I'm glad that this came up because this is the kind of book I was really hoping for this 24 hours. I wanted like a 24-hour flush. So while I'm glad this came up because it was on my TBR, it needed to be read and I read it, a political fantasy is a little bit slower pace than what I felt like I needed right now. And this definitely fit the bill. I also, on our first day of 12 hours, read 37 pages of A Court of Mist and Fury. I've read a little bit since as well, but I still have like 100 pages to go on this. I need to get this done, but I also need to read Silver Cloak. There's just so many books and so little time, which I know is something that everyone can relate to, but I really just feel like I've been embodying that recently. And you know, 2 books is a little less than I hoped for over this 24 hours, but I am trying to be optimistic for my mental health, and that is 2 whole books that I would not have read if not for this video. And that is definitely something. So in terms of our page count, I can't remember how much I read the last time we did this. I'll find out and I'll put it here so I can see if we did better or worse. Probably worse, but the books that I read were longer this time than in the last video, so maybe we're about the same. But on the first day of this readathon, I read 354 pages of this plus 38 pages of A Court of Mist and Fury, which adds up to 392 pages in total. I'm doing all this maths mentally. And then today I finished up A Dance of Lies with 82 pages, and then I read the entirety of Our Perfect Storm, which was 402 pages total, and that of course adds up to 484 pages. So our total for this readathon is 876 pages. I'm gonna run that through a calculator and see if I'm right. Look at that. I maintain that mental maths is my superpower. So that about wraps up this 24-hour readathon. Let me know if you enjoyed this one. Like I said, I did do one a couple of months ago, so if you have enjoyed this one and you didn't catch that one, I will link it for you. If you did enjoy this one, I'm happy to do more in the future, especially because I have been focusing on those more themed vlogs. This is a really good opportunity for me to read those books that don't fit into a category for any of those videos that I feel are really slipping through the cracks, because I hate to be a person that doesn't read my TBR. Like, that stack of books that I said I was going to read, it weighs on me every single day. So I'm happy to integrate these into my vlog schedule every month or every other month to help clear through that backlog if it's something that you guys enjoy watching. So I do hope that you have enjoyed this vlog if you made it this far. If you have, please don't forget to like if you liked it and subscribe if you wanna, and I'll see you guys next week. Bye.
Oh, you bite your friend like chocolate. You say you'll go where nobody knows, with guns hidden under our petticoats. We're never gonna quit it, no, we're never gonna quit it, no.